another Good Takes podcast. Excited to be here with you, Sam, and dive into book
Likewise.
6, last
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, exactly. The journey's coming to a close. I was thinking like I already want to, I'm not going to, but like reread them now. Like so just like looking back so fondly at when times are good with the fellowship.
And so
Um,
much has happened that it's almost like you could start it. Honestly, I always feel like that when I read a really long series because so much has passed that you're like, I want to start this from the very beginning. I honestly agree. So maybe we can do it all over again and dive
yeah,
even
perfect.
deeper in our next takes.
Yeah, why not? But so book six opens up where we left off with Sam and Frodo. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, I don't know. I really love the Sam and Frodo parts of the books. They're very different in their tone, I guess.
the Hobbit perspective is ever present. And, we talked about it a little bit in our last podcast, not sure if we would get through the entire book 6. And it was your call this time, and certainly the right one to just, again, do chapters 1 through 5.
Mm.
So we'll get through half of book 6 in this one. And then in our next podcast, we'll officially finish off the books.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. So
yeah,
we'll see how far we go. I think the later half of chapters 1 to 5, not a lot like a lot happens, but not too much to comment on. But we'll see. I don't know what your experience was, but it's really the first bit up to Mount Doom. I think that's really worth going over.
definitely the journey to Mount Doom. And as this starts, you do start to get a clearer timeline of where the company is while Sam is following the orcs. So I do really like that. Everything's starting to come to a head. I think by the time, just to jump ahead a little bit, by the time Sam and Frodo actually begin their march through Mordor, it's March 15th, and
That's right.
everybody is, I think at that point, the battle has been won, or during this walk. Anyway, it becomes a lot clearer from a timeline perspective.
Yeah,
So it's easy
yeah.
to see.
I think you're right. The battle is in the midst. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, and then and there are tells, and then I think that even when the Witch King dies, I think they notice his spirit come back. I had a note about that. I want to get your opinion when we get there because I
Yeah,
wasn't
for
sure if
sure.
it was clear if it was his spirit or just another Nazgul.
Right,
Um,
right. Okay, no, well let's dive in. So where we start off here, we're in the chapter Tower of Cirith Ungol, and
mhm.
Sam is still has the Light of Arendelle, he still has the ring, and he is desperately seeking Frodo. And I thought it was interesting, as Sam heads towards this tower, he starts to realize that this tower has been built not just to keep enemies out of Mordor, but to keep people in or to keep
Mhm.
slaves in. And there's a mention in the book that Sauron had few servants but many slaves of fear, and still its chief purpose as of old was to prevent escape from Mordor. So I start to feel bad for the orcs. They're not all willing things of evil here.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. I think you're right. And I mean, we'll get into it, but this chapter really also outlines like it goes more in depth on the nature of Sauron's will and its abilities. And you see that with the orcs. I do think he mentions or maybe the narrator does that the tower was built by the Númenóreans or Gondorians. But
Right.
yeah, essentially made for that purpose, especially with the I have to imagine the implementation of the Watchers.
Oh my
But
God.
yeah, so Sam is alone. He's got the ring, and he's doubling back to find a way to the tower because his heart is set on finding Frodo. And this whole part is just really a really beautiful uh part of the book, and it shows all the strengths of Samwise. Because here now, I don't know if we mentioned it in the earlier podcasts, but I was certain that I was like I have such a vivid memory of Sam being tempted with the idea of a garden. And when he took the ring in the
Yes.
second one, I was like, oh, maybe I'm just misremembering, and like I was thought this happened with the Mirror of Galadriel or something. But we get it here, and I think
Yeah.
it's a wonderful little temptation. And I think his
Oh my
answer
God.
to the tempting is very humble.
He's the purest soul in these books, possibly in the universe. I mean, he wants
Yeah.
to become Samwise the Strong. And so when I was reading that, I was like, oh my God, what is Sam's temptation going to be? I'd completely forgotten about the garden, but that's exactly what it was. He desires to make the entire world his garden. I mean, it's
It's like as
hilarious
far as
that this
goals
is,
go, it's like that's quite nice.
if anyone could wield the ring and possibly make some good out of it, it would be Samwise. But even I mean, he does have this hobbit strength, I guess we could call it, to understand that, he should be just happy and content with his own garden. And that's all he really needs. And, evil would eventually come out of this huge desire, as pure as it seems.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he says something about he just wants to use his own hands. He doesn't need someone else to make his little garden, just a little one. And I believe also in there, it's just his love for Frodo, which prevails. Um, which again, it goes back to the idea of what Gandalf says at the beginning of the whole story about when Bilbo found the ring and how he took it in an act of mercy, essentially. Like he began his ring ownership in mercy by sparing Gollum. Frodo did it in self-sacrifice, and Sam did it for love of his master. So again, it's just if you want to stop the temptation of the ring, you should you know,
Have a greater
have
purpose.
yeah, exactly,
I
exactly.
think I've referenced Harry Potter in every single podcast, so I'm not even going to be
It's
ashamed of it.
fitting.
But it reminds
Mhm.
me of in the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, when Harry at the end of it gets through all of the traps that are in place to prevent someone from getting the stone. And then when he looks in the mirror of Erised, um, he is given the stone. And later when he's talking to Dumbledore, Dumbledore says, yes, anyone who is looking to seeking the stone, but not to use it was the only one
Mhm.
who would be able to get it out of the mirror. So I feel like there's some similarities there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and that's it's one of the more beautiful parts of those books. I really like the Philosopher's Stone, and
Oh, we'll
the
do
guy who
Harry
plays
Potter.
Dumbledore, the first one, you remember his name, the
Richard
actor's name?
Harris, how dare
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
The OG Dumbledore, the only real Dumbledore there is.
yeah, gone too soon because he was perfect for that role. Because the difference between, don't need to get in, maybe we get to have a conversation about this at a later date,
Yeah.
but a major difference between Dumbledore and Gandalf is Dumbledore is a little more warm and a little more. I mean, he's a professor over students, so fair enough. But
Yeah. Well, and he hides his dark nature better. Anyway, that is a whole thing. We
yeah,
definitely need to do Harry Potter at some point because I have so much to say there. But I thought that that was a similar comparison between what you're saying about those who use the ring or have the ring, but don't
mhm.
necessarily have that powerful or ill intention. Not necessarily that it's always ill, but powerful for themselves versus leveraging it or using it for some greater good, destroying
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
finding Frodo, etc.
Yeah. So then after Sam decides that such visions are too big for him, he goes to the tower. And then there's quite a happy little I don't know, some change of fortune with the tower being emptied.
Right. Well, he's so lucky that the orcs have fought amongst themselves. And it's funny that later on, there seems to be this notion throughout Mordor that the orcs were not fighting among themselves. This great
Mhm.
and terrible being actually just decimated all of them.
Yeah.
But before he even realizes that they're all dead, he does hear that it's quiet and he understands this is his opportunity. But you mentioned it at the beginning, the Watchers, the two Watchers
Mhm.
that are guarding the entrance, absolutely terrifying. Like once again, Tolkien is so
Yeah.
good at this description, very Cerberus like too. When you think of the
The
guard of
multi-headed
the
being.
underworld, yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they
Good
each have
point.
three joined bodies and three heads facing outward and inward and across the gateway. And it's terrifying that he can't get through, and it's an invisible barrier, but it's just the force of this ill will that prevents
Yeah, it
anyone from
stops him in
entering.
his tracks essentially, and he can't get through. And then you're left to wonder. I think, anyways, it's purposefully made vague as to what they are, but it's still interesting to speculate because I can't imagine that this was built by the Gondorians
Oh
of
no,
old. This
has to
has
be
to
a
be a
Sauron
Sauron.
device.
So then
Yeah.
I wonder, is it a spirit that's like trapped within? Or is it not even alive and it just gives that impression?
I think it might be. Well, there's a line that they seem to be carved out of huge blocks of stone, immovable, and yet they were aware. Some dreadful spirit of evil vigilance abode in them. So I'd be really interesting to know what that is. I didn't dig into it
Yeah.
at all, but I do
No,
get the
neither did
sense that
I.
a spirit, a malicious spirit, has been embedded into them to
Hmm.
act as this guardian and watcher.
Yeah, maybe there's some letters, maybe in one of Tolkien's letters, um,
Mm-hmm.
or if someone's aware. Because yeah, I was interested in, but it's sometimes the less you know, the better the effect is, because it is creepy. And once more, fortune graces Sam because he was left with the file, and it was good thinking on his part also for pulling it out
Mm-hmm.
because it worked
It
well.
seems like sometimes when he uses the light of Arendelle, he doesn't necessarily it's like a power is guiding him to use it. And I can't recall if in
Mhm.
this instance that's the case, but it will just kind of take over him and he'll be like, oh, right, I've got this light. And he holds it up and he's able to get through. But it speaks to the power of these watchers that even though he uses the light, the spirits watchers can't take it and he's able to pass. They let out this huge shriek, which is essentially an
Mhm.
alarm bell. So his presence is still known, but he is able to get through it.
Yeah, he calls it a doorbell. No, but I think you are right. There's always like this idea that he's being nudged to use it. Um, And then it said, I think it was in that moment when he did it, or perhaps it's on his way out. But it says like how it was now even shining like even brighter, like to honor the hand of like him
Hmm.
and his deeds and his purpose. Um,
Yeah.
so
The
there's something
worthiness.
going on with the light, and
Yeah. I
right.
think
So
you
he
might be
gets in,
right
yeah.
that the letters probably speak to this a lot more. So just a note that after we've gone through the books, we'll obviously do the appendices of the books, but we should go into Tolkien's letters too. And I think we'll be able to answer a lot of the questions we've had in the last few podcasts
Yeah, I just
by a
want to know
result of his.
where they're bound up in. I don't know if it's the histories of Middle Earth or if there's like a volume of just the letters, but we'll look into that because I've seen a few online. We were talking briefly about this, and but not many because I think there are hundreds of them,
Yeah.
and they're so insightful, and he speaks so they're written as though he like intended to have them published. Now, I don't think he did at all, but it just goes to show his ability to write, be it fiction or just talking to his son or his publisher or a friend.
Well, and how immersed in the world he was, because even if I
Yeah.
mean, if he didn't expect these to see the light of day and they're still that descriptive and immersive, I mean, just goes to
Mhm.
show how much he's dedicated to this world.
Yeah. So yeah, there was before Sam gets inside the tower, um, or maybe it is after, but the Nazgul comes because of this alarm that you mentioned is raised. And in that moment, I was thinking it's like I think we've spoken before. I think the Nazgul are very well done in this. I think they're creepy and great villains. But in this moment, I was like, these guys really don't do much. Like they kind of screwed up almost everything left of them, and to the degree where it's like they were losing the fear factor. It's like what are they gonna do? They're just gonna fly by again. I will say it. Like I just that thought crossed my mind.
Well, I wonder if at this point it's just kind of showing the frantic energy of the dark side and how they are losing and they're kind of floundering. Like no one has entered.
Yeah,
I assume they would feel that no one can get past these watchers. So they're probably confused about what the hell is happening. But
true.
you raise an interesting point that they are really just flying overhead ominously, likely to
Good
see
books.
whoever's entered is going to eventually exit. And maybe it speaks more to the hobbits and less to the incompetence of the Nazgul that the hobbits are so small. They're wearing these Lorien cloaks. They're just
Mhm.
they're not what's
No,
expected.
that's true.
If you were a great warrior, if Aragorn or Boromir was entering, they would be so visible that the Nazgul would be able to
Mhm.
come down and just kind of end it. But I think it's the uncertainty of the evil beings that they don't even know what they're up against. And as
Yeah,
Sam
that's true.
enters, he has that moment where like there's the illusion is I guess because of the ring, because he is just standing there and one orc comes
Oh, when the orc
into the
comes across him.
area. I believe it's Snaga, so we'll get a sense of who he is later. But he doesn't see a small frightened hobbit. He saw a great silent shape cloaked in a gray shadow looming against the wavering light behind. In one hand it held a sword, the very light of which was a bitter pain, the other was clutched at its breast, but held concealed some nameless menace of power and doom. So Samwise the Strong is very much real right now.
Yeah, yes. I love that description. And I love just by how you don't even have to be wearing the ring for it to still imbue you with some of its
Just
power.
possessing it is all you need, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he says the elf warrior is loose.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think
exactly.
he runs off. So
Runs back up the stairs.
that's
Yeah.
right. And this is Sam's opportunity because the tower is so vast. He doesn't even know where to
Mhm.
start. And he follows this orc and is therefore able to find where they've been keeping Frodo. But even though he follows the orc is so fast that Sam ends up at a dead end and he's trying doors and he's just seeing dead bodies of orcs. But he can't find Frodo. And you
Mhm.
see his moment of despair for sure when he starts singing. And
Yeah.
oh,
I think
that
that's
just breaks my
maybe that's
heart.
one of my favorite parts of the book. It's definitely my favorite song in the book. Um, yeah, it's a lovely little poem. And I think it just kind of once more, just there's a narrative theme in there of just like there's things like there are such things as like high beauty and also uh the persistence to keep going and not having the right to despair.
Do you have a quote from the song? Because I remember thinking it was beautiful, but I actually didn't save it. I
No,
don't know
I
if you
I
have
don't
it.
know all of it, but it's just like here at journey's end I lie in darkness buried deep, beyond all mountains strong and high, beyond all towers strong and high, beyond all mountains steep, uh beyond all shadows rides the sun, and darkness and light forever dwells. I will not say the day is done, nor bid the stars farewell. Something like that.
It's
And it's just
beautiful.
it's so beautiful because I also think at that moment he sees uh the actual light of Erendil, the star,
That's right.
um, and comes through,
Because
which
he's
is
seen it through
just
the
and
window.
yeah, and he has that there is that brief passage that he uses in the quote in the movie in his little speech in the Two Towers.
Yeah.
Um, and again, like I think it's in the appendices, but I'm 99.9% certain that that is the star of Erendil,
Yeah.
that he sees in the window, which is the Silmar. It's a Silmaril, and
Mhm.
it's cool. Like he's holding that also in his breast, and it just how Tolkien connected these stories. And if you read this at the time of it being published, there would be no hint of the Silmarillion or any of the following texts. Like so it's quite cool how the lore was already like all established by the time this book came out. Anyways, I love that moment. I think it's really touching.
No, it is. It's really beautiful. And it's because of that, it's because of that moment that he has that he's able to find out that Frodo's actually in the attic, I guess, because there's a trap door above his head. And this orcs, thank goodness, think that it's Frodo singing. So
Yeah.
they come up all ready to, whip him back into shape. And that's how Sam is actually able to get up there. And he sees the orc kind of whipping Frodo and he
Sticks
attacks.
him.
But again, yeah, Samwise once again to the rescue. And now he's
Yeah.
finally reunited with his master. I hate
No,
that word,
exactly.
but
And
happy to
it is
see
just
it.
cool that it's like a song. Yeah, it is his master. It's like because I again, it's one of those moments where like Sam he just started to sing. Like he didn't know why. He was just doing his little tunes, and then those words just sing. And but I think Frodo does say that he was trying to sing in back like
In response.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then but you see just how screwed up Frodo is because he's not at this point you get damaged Frodo from here on out. PTSD Frodo.
No, it's so true. And he obviously feels so hopeless because he's like, do you not understand, Sam? They've taken everything from me.
Hmm.
And then Sam again to the rescue once again, saying, actually, I've
You can
got, the two most valuable things, that primarily being the ring. And then you see this is really the first time you see Frodo having kind of a hateful reaction to the idea of the ring being taken from him when he
hmm
kind of freaks out at Sam and is like, it's not yours. You can't have it. Give it back to me immediately. And he recovers and apologizes, but he snaps. It's very Bilbo in Fellowship when his CGI face goes all crazy in the movies. That always scared me as a kid.
Yeah, same. No, yeah, and I think and we'll start to see that now going forward because I think we briefly spoke about this over text, but you never I think the movies did a better job at showing it wearing on Frodo because there's maybe a few mentions of it when they're coming out of the Emon Wheel in the book about how like the weight is getting heavier, but it isn't until you enter Mordor that you really see like I guess in the movies you have the benefit of the makeup because Tolkien doesn't really describe like how Frodo looks before these moments.
Right.
And Elijah Wood in the movies, even like in the Two Towers, his eyes are sunken and he's always like stroking it and looking at it. But here in
Mm-hmm.
the books, it's only now that he begins to like always kind of have it in his hand.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. No, the visuals of the movie do a good job. And, reading that moment, that exchange between Sam and Frodo made me better understand the decision in Two Towers to send Sam away. I'm honestly getting all of them confused now. But anyway, regardless, that moment when Sam, I still don't agree with it at all. But
yeah.
I think it was a fair showcase of how the ring is impacting Frodo so much that Sam's moment of asking to share the load, the up close
Yeah,
on
the
his lips when he does
love.
that, and how that would have immediately put Frodo on the defense because the ring is in his mind at this point, like poisoning his mind, and making him very possessive of it.
Yeah. And but that he even takes it in stride, even in the tower there, when he thinks it's all gone, he's not, I mean, he despairs. He does get down and I think he weeps. But yeah, that would be a horrible moment. Samwise did save the day, and it's in that moment I also think that Frodo gives Sting to Sam, like officially, for
Yeah,
a time, anyways.
yeah.
And also to hold on to the light.
Is it in? I think it is up here. So, Sam's explaining we have to cloak ourselves in this orc gear so that we blend
Mhm.
in. And I think that this is when Frodo does give, as you said, he certainly gives Sam Sting. And I think he makes comment like, I'm not going to raise a sword again from here on out.
Yeah, he's like, I will never, he's like, now, well, yeah, he's like, I'll never touch a sword.
Yeah.
Which I think is actually a really interesting. And I think there are many different interpretations. I think probably the most narratively relevant one would be if he starts to kill even just an orc under such influence with the ring, it would probably just like expedite what small fraction of any of himself is already left. And so by even like engaging and killing, even if it is an orc, maybe it would just push him over the edge. But it's very interesting because it continues on after. Like the Tolkien has made it's brought up at least two, maybe three other times after this moment about how he doesn't ever want to wield a sword.
Yeah. No, and I
What
think
do
there
you think
gets to
about it?
be a different, like an analysis that we can talk about when everyone is reunited and you kind of see
Hmm.
these different symbols of what that meant for Frodo and his character. But I think that's an interesting point you raise. He is so on the precipice of being consumed by evil that any evil act he might take at this point is just going to further that along. And maybe he doesn't consciously know that, but it certainly does make sense. And yeah, I mean, I also think it speaks to the power of Frodo as not a messenger, but as an innocent and as
A
someone who's
scapegoat,
completely
essentially.
pure. Yeah, he's not out there murdering. He's on a quest that was the burden was thrust upon him, and he's fulfilling it, but he's fulfilling it in an honorable way.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I think it just goes to show why um it had to be Frodo and only Frodo could do this. Because even Samwise, even though you could argue with great effect that Samwise is like perhaps a more I don't know how to say it, not charitable soul, but self-certain, not self-sacrificing in many respects.
Yeah.
But even he, like as you see with Gollum, it's like he's more violent. He's has a temper. Frodo knew the treachery of Gollum just as well, probably more than Sam, but he never loses his temper. He's always in control of himself. But as we see, was it'll go on, he's also hopeless, and I think that also plays a part in it. He's like, if an orc gets me, like he's like, an orc will get me. This is going.
I
Like,
just
I'm
have
not
to go
making
as
it to
far as
that
I
mountain.
can.
He's like, I'm
Yeah.
glad. Yeah, I'm glad you have the ring. That was awesome that you saved it. But like, this is still done. Like, there's no chance.
Yes, and I just have to go as far as I can because that's what I've said I'll do, but I'm not going to
Yeah.
make it. Yeah, he's lost all hope. And that's why it's so critical that Sam is with him because Sam is the guiding hope. You know, Frodo is the essential element that's going to see this through, but Sam is needed, as is Gollum, as we'll see later. But Sam
Mhm.
is that guiding hope that is needed to see success because if something is truly hopeless, how do you go on?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And yeah, so we'll see more of that. So yeah, so they Sam collects the orc gear. He has his little weeping moment at Frodo's feet when he's called a thief. Um, but you know, the master and the and the servant are back at it.
Disgusting. Anyway, well, whatever. What is this master without a servant? Because it's coming up
Yeah,
Sam
yeah,
these days, all
exactly.
right? He's the only
No, it
reason
is.
that a lot of this
That's
happens.
exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And
Um,
actually it's as they leave. So as they're leaving the tower, that's when Sam notices the wind change that everyone saw in Pelennor. So I wasn't correct earlier. So yes, they gave us a timeline, but Pellennor's fields, the battle is still happening at this point when Sam and
mhm.
Frodo are reuniting in the tower.
It
And
says
when
us
they
dead and
leave,
lay dead or something.
yeah, that's exactly right. Um, it was the morning of the 15th of March, and the sun was rising, and the southwest wind was blowing. They had laid dead in the Pelennor fields, and then that's when Sam says, "Look, Mr. Frodo, the wind's changed. Something's happening. He's not having it all his own way." So that wind change that happens and turns the tide of the Battle of Pelennor is now being experienced even in Mordor by the hobbits,
Hmm.
which is, and his darkness is breaking up out in the world there. And then that's when Sam sees the star twinkling, and the beauty of it
Right.
smote his heart, and you know, he kind of gets that feeling of hope once again.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is just, I mean, Tolkien has a love for the stars, but it is like it's exactly right. Just like how in that moment, Sam does have moments of despair, but he's always brought out of it.
Yeah.
He has a great view of the world. Maybe that's because he's a gardener. But
Yeah. And there is a line to that that says, "Never for long had hope died in his staunch heart, and always until now he had taken some thought for their return." But
mhm,
then he's looking at their provisions, and he's like, even with this lembas bread, and they do a lot more allusion to the fact that this bread does keep you sustained. It keeps you going when you don't have other food. It will, even the smallest bite will keep you going. Because I know we
mhm.
talked about that before and how that moment in fellowship isn't laid out, but they certainly do clarify it here.
Yeah, it's
But
more of
that's
a
when even Sam
statement.
realizes, like, the provisions are not going to last there and back again. It's like we got one
Yeah,
shot at
exactly.
this.
No, but I love that moment in the Return of the King, because it starts where Frodo's like, I have this feeling I won't be back. It's like, that's just morbid thinking. But then when Sam is the one to admit, like, I don't think there will be a return journey. It's just like, oh no.
They've even
So
got
yeah, you get that
Sam.
moment here. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. They even got Sam. Like they
Yeah,
broke
yeah,
Sam's
exactly.
spirit somehow. That's when you know everything is truly hopeless.
Yeah,
It's
times are
really
tough.
devastating. But he still doesn't give up hope. He still says, we're still going to go, as far as we can, even though there could be no return.
Mhm. And as for the provisions, Mordor does, and you had mentioned this in the last podcast, I think, but you were really thirsty the entire time.
Oh my
It's a great
God.
job of just like how they're so parched.
Yeah. No, they're there for so long. So another
Mhm.
complaint I've heard about the books, and one I actually kind of shared when I was younger, is that it does kind of drag their journey through Mordor. It's so descriptive of the land. It takes them so long. They have to double back at certain points. I mean,
Mhm.
it's 9 days. So if it's March 15th when they see the wind changing,
And
the
that's
ring
the
is destroyed
23rd,
March
right?
25th, 25th, I believe. So actually 10
Okay, yeah, sure.
days. Um, so I mean, they're there for so long. And again, I was like had a huge glass of water next to me, which I feel guilty about, as they're drinking the oily orc water
Every
every like
day.
other day. But it is arid and the description is so detailed. Like it just, oh my God, you feel like you're right there.
No, I agree with you. It does go on, especially the second chapter, just because it's not so much as the descriptions, but it's like the doubling back. And it's just like toiling in the ridges of like I forget the word he uses, but the wall, essentially the inner wall in Mordor.
I felt
Um,
waste is like the
no,
mountains, I
that's the
guess.
mountains.
Yeah.
It's like but like anyways, like it's just I don't know, and I think I mean you and I had again spoken briefly about this, but my only guess is just like because Mordor was built up to be this thing the entire time, Tolkien needed to just keep the story there for a bit. But if you had some huge plot introduction, then it would probably just extend the book a lot more, which I would have been fine with. But not like it's like nothing happens. They get captured again, but like for 2 pages, and
Yeah.
it works in their benefit. But yeah, no. So I agree. It kind of drags on this part.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is a little bit tedious. Like you said, there's just so much doubling back. And then, yes, the one moment where they run into orcs and they have to fall into line. And it's very true. The movie is very true to this whole
Mhm.
moment.
Well, that whole thing is
Right up
extended.
until, oh my God, stop.
Yeah, I
So
think
the
all of
whole
that is
moment
extended.
of, for reference, Sam and Frodo are walking through Mordor. They have this orc helm on, they have the whole outfit on. They're on a path and they realize there's no way of getting off this path. They can hear footsteps coming. So they just sit down, try to look indiscreet. And then one of the orcs that are passing by notices them and is like, get up, don't you know we're at war? And makes them like get into line. I had no idea that whole scene in the movies is extended.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure certain all of it.
Wow.
And
Wow.
like fair enough because it doesn't progress the plot in any meaningful way. But it is cool. It gives you that little last like oh no, it just shows that you are in enemy territory. Um,
Yeah,
but they also before that they do have the run in. They get quite fortunate again with the two orcs. There's like a sniffer orc.
that's right.
Um,
It's
and
like tracking.
yeah, exactly. And just when he stops sniffing, he gives up the hunt. And you just like what you mentioned in the Two Towers when we were going through, you again just get more humanization from the orcs because they speak about how the war is going grim, or so they think. They're all afraid of the Nazgul. Um, and yeah, they're clearly not, they don't want to be here and they don't want to be fighting elvish lords.
No,
Um,
that's
but
right.
yeah, so I don't know. Like it's an interesting chapter, but it went on a little long. There wasn't briefly just about how you said with the winds change, and that's when Sam sees the star. Sam also wishes to Galadriel that there be water, and then they get both. So I don't know if these guys are just lucky or if they're tuning into something, but I don't know.
I like to think there's a higher power. I always go back to that quote from Gandalf. And again, I always remember it from the movies because that's where it just cut me. But in Mines of Moria, there are other forces at work than just that of evil. Bilbo was meant to
Exactly.
find the ring, and you, Frodo, were meant to have it.
Yeah. No,
And
no,
I think those
exactly.
other forces are totally at play. Like they can't take the ring. This force isn't going to pick up the ring and throw it into Mount Doom, but it
No,
can
I can't.
help carve a way for those that are willing to sacrifice everything to see it through.
Exactly, because I still want to see if there are any prevailing ideas about if the Valar were assisted in the battle with the wind changing to speed up Aragorn.
Right.
So I want to look into that. Maybe in the letters we'll get more of an idea, or if
Yeah.
some lore master, can let us know.
Please guide us. Because I mean, we could talk about Lord of the Rings endlessly and go into a lot of different analyses. And I'm sure that there are different views on it too. And so a lot of this has really just been our perspective from reading the books and watching the movies. So there's certainly a lot that we're, missing or that we haven't even really dove into. So welcome any comments or any details on what your perspective is of that. But I think there's certainly a case to be made that is indeed happening.
Yeah, exactly. But our little characters, if it is, they don't know it. And I love how Sam is giving like as they're looking for water and food, and they think that they're gonna starve to death. The Sam is still just like giving Frodo all of the food and water. And I was
I
like,
know. He's so pure. It's just unbelievable. And I mean, obviously, Frodo's strength is diminishing a lot more rapidly because he is holding the ring, but still, Sam is just so selfless. And there is that moment when he is going down to refill their water while Frodo is resting, and he sees this slinking creature. And like Gollum
yeah,
is the best tracker in the entire world. I guess the ring is
yeah,
calling him, right? Like that has to be how he's so capable of constantly finding them.
yeah. I think that certainly plays into it.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy that he's just like constantly there. And so Sam is able to get back there in time. Slinker slinks away.
Yeah,
And yeah, Sam continues to make sure that Frodo has, the provisions needed. And then there is a moment actually when they have that connection bit or they see Gollum and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, but it's, I mean, chapter 2, like we said, it's a little bit tedious. They do have that moment where they have to fall in line with the orcs. The only difference from
and
the
it is
movies is
anxiety
that
inducing. Like it is a
totally.
like because like they can't. They're already at their end, and they're being pushed on beyond anything.
Well, right, 'cause they're having to match the pace, and Sam's like, I can barely do this. I don't know how Frodo is going to manage. The only difference is that in the books, or in the movies rather, Frodo has that moment where he's like, "Hit me, Sam! Like, let's start a fight and get out of here." Which I like in the movies, but in the
Yeah,
books,
agreed.
they're more lucky. It's just the fact that so many different orc armies are converging at this center point, this fork in the road, that they're able to get away in the midst
Mhm.
of the confusion. But I like that the movies took that liberty. It's a cool difference.
I do too. And you get that moment like you were just explaining with the big guy smells them out and just yeah. But
Yeah.
it's more or less true. But I think you
Yeah.
were saying something.
Oh no, so I mean, that's basically chapter 2 done. Chapter 3 is oh my God, the huge culmination of this all, Mount Doom. And
Mhm.
it's in that chapter where Gollum comes up once again. And he is, I mean, they're on their way to, and I'm just trying to find the quote of it, but
I think this
they're,
must be towards the end because I don't think Gollum shows up
yes,
again until they're on the
you're
mountain.
right. You're right. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but after they've escaped from the orc army, they realize they have to throw away all their provisions. And
Right.
Sam tearing up, having to part with his cooking gear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
God,
He's remembering
what a
this huge
beautiful
rabbit.
soul. Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
exactly. I
It is.
remember it too, Sam.
Yeah, no, no, it is, and it just goes to show that I don't know, like I certainly understand his feelings of like growing sentimentally attached to like inanimate objects essentially, but these things have come so far with them, and it is really just like maybe it's like symbolic of him having no hope. He's like, I'm not ever going to use this again. Like, like I'm going to die in the next day.
But
Um,
clearly has a little bit of hope because not only does he keep the light of Arendelle, which will obviously help them, but he also keeps
yeah,
the little box that Galadriel gave him of the
that's
seeds
true.
that he can plant. So I like to think that that's subconscious Sam always having hope, never fully giving up.
No, I think he does, and I mean we're nearing it now, but you do kind of see that his will essentially because it's not shortly after that it happens a little earlier in the books when they collapse essentially and they can't go on and Frodo's
Yes.
like crawling a bit but they can't
Yeah.
go on, but then and Sam is like as they're laying there, Sam's like thinking of his gaffer and Rosie and just of the Shire and like playing in the little streams.
Yeah. Well, and
And
because
yeah,
they do
you
have
hit
that
him.
moment in the movies, like later on, I think after everything's
Yeah,
destroyed,
yeah,
where they're
yeah,
remembering the Shire, but just hearing Sam's internal monologue of all of these things that he's missing that he doesn't think he's going to see again is devastating. And that's when he says, come on, Mr. Frodo, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry
yeah,
you. I love
exactly.
that moment in the movies.
Me too. And it's almost as equally powerful in the books. You just lack the music and like the emotional punch of like seeing it. But I think it is still quite powerful. It's a little more wordy, but there was a moment when Sam decides that even though he's given up, it's like I have the quote here. But even as hope died in Sam, or seemed to die, it was turned to a new strength. Sam's plain hobbit face grew stern, almost grim, as the will hardened in him, and he felt through all his limbs a thrill. So it's just the idea that, he knew it for his love of his master or something. It's like neither despair or weariness or endless barren miles could subdue him. And he just somehow picks up Frodo, puts him on his back.
Stud,
This,
absolute stud. It's just, yeah, no, you're right. He has that final kind of push, and Sam just has so much strength in him. It's insane. And it kind of speaks to earlier when they were talking about can't remember if it was in reference to Merry or Pippin, but the slow kindled courage of their race, and
that's
how,
right,
this is the
exactly.
moment where Sam really just needs to give it all, and he does without question.
Yeah, because
He
and he's
loves
just been
Frodo.
watching Frodo getting tormented because, like, we touched on this briefly, but um, it even though I thought it was lackluster in the first parts of the book, in Mordor, Tolkien does a really good job at explaining the torment. Like Frodo's like cowering as if he's like getting hit, and he's like you kind of see it in the
Oh
movies when he's like
yes,
wow,
when he was,
like
yeah, batting
yeah.
things
But
away.
I think the way Tolkien described it was like he was like unseen blows were coming at him, and he
Yeah,
does have the whole speech about how he only sees the wheel of fire, and there's no memory of
yes.
trees or grass or anything.
Yeah, I can't remember the taste of food and things like that. And
Yeah, so Sam's
yeah,
love hardens him up at the sight of Frodo
yeah.
suffering.
No, that's it. And then it's in that moment because when Sam decides to pick up Frodo, carry him, and just run up. I mean, at this point, they're at the base of the mountain, or part way up, so they still have so far to go. But they're at
Mhm.
Mount Doom. They're at Erodrin, so they know that the end is near. And it's when he starts walking, when he's committed to this, that he sees the path that is there, and it's Sauron's road to the Chambers of Fire. So he didn't even realize that. And it's once again just when all feels hopeless, when he picks up that nerve and courage to just continue to see it through, a path is shown to him.
It's
And
like
so
that
they
idea
come to
of
that.
that we mentioned briefly that again, like it's a term that I'm very confident Tolkien coined, but eucatastrophe. It's like
Mm,
at the very end when all things are destroyed, a bit like bitter defeat, there's one little last gleam of hope. So it's like in Sam when Sam's searching for Frodo in the tower, you see that, and then he
yeah,
sings just because it's over. But no, you're exactly right. And then they see like, wow, how convenient. There's a door and a path, and um,
that's exactly it. I
yeah,
love that term, and I'd never heard it before. You mentioned it in one of the previous podcasts, but I absolutely love it.
yeah, it's the opposite of
Eucatastrophe.
catastrophe, essentially. Yeah.
No, well, it happens quite a bit in the books. And yeah, it really, it's the characters that are the most hopeful that get that moment, that not
Mhm.
redemption, but
But when they
they're
don't despair, it's like they're
yeah,
rewarded for not.
that's exactly
Um,
it.
but there's another moment just to the higher power thing. Uh, when Sam is carrying Frodo, they fall the first time, but then there's some like he gets something in his head says, go again now or it's too late. Like there's a
Yes, that's
moment where it's
right.
like he's given up again, but it's like you have to go right now.
Yeah. And see, that is the other forces at work than that
Yeah,
of
yeah,
evil. There
totally.
is something telling him this is the moment. And it's because, they've been walking through Mordor for days, to the point that now that they're at the base of the mountain, or not the base, but now that they're upwards, almost at the crack of doom, that is the moment where Aragorn has led the army of men to the Black Gate. And so this
Mhm.
distraction will only hold for so long. And that's why the voice is
That's
saying,
right.
Frodo, this is your moment.
Because they get a glimpse of the Dark Tower. It's the first time you see it in the book, like from a character's perspective, when like the shadows that surround the tower break for a moment, and they see like the eye of Sauron, not like it is in the movie, but they see the red light, like his will all bent to the north. And it
Yeah.
breaks Frodo because he just sees the connection. But Sam makes it like the clear idea that's like this thing is not looking for us. It has like
Mm-hmm.
there is still hope essentially.
Yeah.
We're
And I
not
think they
found
do a
out.
good job of that visual in the movies too, because the eyes kind
Yeah,
of looking around, and then the whole light kind of shifts away, and they know that that's their moment to go.
yeah. I like. I'm sure there are people online who don't like the representation of Sauron in the films, but I think for the medium, it's perfect. Um, because I don't know how else you could represent the idea of a will that can exert itself over the earth in like a
Mm-hmm.
searching manner.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point, because when I read the books, I don't picture an eye at the top of that
No,
tower,
I don't think it. No, I don't think it's supposed to be interpreted like that.
but the
My
visual
understanding
explains
is
it.
just the eye is his will. Like he
Yeah.
can sense. It's a sixth sense or something.
Yeah.
Um,
No, exactly. Like he's up there somewhere, just kind of
yeah, like I
manipulating
imagine.
things.
Maybe I'm wrong about this, but because it's not described per se, but I imagine Sauron is physically manifested and he's in the
Me too.
tower.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and because
that's been my,
there's quotes about how it's in the last debate, maybe, or it's Denethor who says
Mhm.
that Sauron would only come to gloat, like he's only
Right.
going to use other people up until the
Yeah.
moment of victory.
Well, and I mean, in the first war where Isildur cuts off the ring, he has a physical form then too.
Yeah.
So my understanding was that he was rebuilding this as he got
Mhm.
more energy and power. His form was rebuilt, very similar to Voldemort being resurrected in the fourth Harry Potter movie book.
I wonder what came
But
first.
oh my gosh, okay, I know, but I still love it, and it's still where
Yeah,
my mind
yeah.
goes because
I
I've
know
read Harry Potter
it's an
first.
archetypal story. Yeah, yeah. No, I think that there's a reason why that's used. I don't think it's like a copying.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think when he's like in Dol Guldur and whatnot in Mirkwood, I think
yeah.
I think he just like he uses his will to bring back a form.
To manifest this form, yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, the movies do a great visual. It would be impossible in a movie to demonstrate the will, and if you just showed a physical being like willing things in his tower, it would just
Yeah,
seem
yeah, it
so
would be
cheesy. So
cheesy.
I like the visual.
No,
But
agreed.
if
It
you
leaves it
don't,
more
tell us
mystery.
why.
But I do wonder because I mean at this point we're at the end anyways. Um you never see Sauron ever. He's
No,
never described really in the
which
books.
makes him
Do
more
you what do you
ominous.
think about that? Do you think that does it make him a more terrifying villain? Does it make him a less fleshed out villain? Like how is Sauron in your mind?
I think it makes him way more terrifying. Like the unknown is so terrifying to me, at least. So not knowing, just knowing he's this huge power, knowing that he's had this huge force that's essentially undefeatable, unstoppable, and then that you actually never really see what he looks like. Like once you can put a form to something, you start to understand it, and the inability to understand Sauron, except that he is this all powerful, dark, insidious being. To me, it's more terrifying. What do you think?
No, I think that's an excellent point. It's one of the reasons I think horror movies, one, I think they're just bad, most of them in general, but they always, even a good horror movie, it immediately takes a turn for the worst as soon as you see the monster. And
Yeah,
it's that
it's
idea where it's like you understand it or like the shock factor is gone.
yeah.
I think your take is right. It adds to it. I think it also just adds to what maybe Tolkien was trying to convey with an enemy like Sauron, where it's like, yes, this is an entity, like a singular thing, but it almost seems like it's more than that. It's more of like an idea and the idea of evil itself and how it manifests and how it takes action in the world. So I think I know I think that's the right way to interpret it because I often try to remove myself as if I were a first time reader, and I feel like if I wasn't so familiar with the story, I would absolutely expect a confrontation between at least Aragorn and Sauron, if not Frodo and Sauron,
Mhm.
just to have like some like conversation. You would definitely if the book was written today, you would have that like on the nose explanation.
Yeah, they walk out and meet each other. But no, I think like I was saying, like it's all the more terrifying that he's not that physical being that we can see. Even though he is a physical being,
Mhm.
there's not that meeting. And what he does is he impacts other physical beings and puts his darkness and evil and power into them. So I think having the Witch King and that moment between him and Eowyn and Mary
Mhm.
and to a point Theoden is is the best resolution of that because Sauron can create these terrifying physical formed monsters and they will execute his will. But the all more terrifying thing is you defeat that physical form, it doesn't matter. The spirit of Sauron is still there. He will just find another form and
Deal
come for
with
you again. Yeah, it's
exactly. No, I
crazy.
think exactly. So I agree with that interpretation, and I think it serves the story. So okay, but so we're not at the destruction of the ring quite yet. So there, Sam is carrying Frodo for the last leg, and then we
Mm.
get an old friend has rejoined
Yes.
us.
And so this is what I was going to bring up, but I realized I was jumping the gun. This Gollum moment. God. I mean, as much as you want to hate Gollum, he proves in this chapter that he was absolutely essential to the plot. And Gandalf
Hmm.
knew it the whole time. But the
Yep.
moment when when Gollum kind of comes to them and starts attacking or whatever, and Frodo and Gollum have this kind of standoff, and they're standing there together up the mountain. Sam sees the two of them in a completely different light, and I find that so interesting because he sees the creature. Poor Gollum. This really made me feel bad for him, but he sees Gollum as
Yep.
wholly ruined and defeated, filled with a hideous lust and rage. But Frodo, on the other hand, is stern, untouchable now by pity, a figure robed in white, but at its breast it held a wheel of fire. Out of the fire there spoke a commanding voice, "Be gone and trouble me no more. If you touch me ever again, you shall be cast yourself into the fire of doom."
Hmm.
Prophetic, Frodo, because
Very
that's
prophetic.
exactly what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not and it's essentially the same oath that Gollum swore on the Precious at the beginning of when they
That's
first
right.
met. And it's interesting how Frodo is like robed in white to Sam's eye, because we've brought it up before, but when Frodo gets the Morgul blade wound from the Witch King and Gandalf is looking at him in Rivendell, he's like this, he's like clear now, and he will be a file that will be filled up with white light, which is essentially it's like Frodo is physically there, but I think, and we can get into this, like you mentioned with when we talk about the sword, I think on a spiritual level he's kind of ascended, like to like a point of like asceticism, or like he's not like I think it's a suffering in a lot of ways, but I think that's kind of the vision that Sam gets.
He's got like a
But it's
foot in the
gross,
other
and you see
world.
Gollum, and it's like Gollum is even more dehydrated and starving because he doesn't have lembas bread, and you really do pity him. And like, and in that moment, we see Sam for the first time also pities him and spares him.
Which and how the tables have turned, because Frodo's described as unpitying, but Sam pities him. And that's right. Sam has this
Mhm.
moment to destroy him and just says,
Yeah,
"Get out of here.
end it
I
right
can't
there.
kill
Yeah,
such a pitiable creature."
which is very moving. And I mean, we've spoken at length. The idea of pity, it's poignant. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's always for the
because
best. Every
you,
character that acts with that pity, it's for, Sam so easily could have just killed Gollum. And at this point, why not? He's been dogging your
yeah,
footsteps
more
every
than justified.
time. Just get rid of him. But he can't do it. And maybe that's the other
No,
power, or maybe it's just something innate in Sam that he can't just kill this, not harmless, but
no,
this,
I think this time, this is an innate in Sam.
yeah.
And I think that it's why he's gotten so far. But no, you're right. It is all these characters that have pity that are rewarded, who don't
Yeah.
cast judgment. Because I think even the narrator says it's like, and Gollum deserved it. Like he would have deserved it 10
Yeah.
times over. And
Yeah.
I don't think anyone could refute that. But
And so that's it. You're right. He deserves it, but Sam stays his hand. He does not kill Gollum, and he tells him to leave, and Gollum runs a couple feet, turns around, immediately comes back. But at this point, Sam just has eyes for Frodo. And it's so sad to me when Frodo just starts running in the last home stretch and says, "Farewell, Sam. This is the end at
yeah,
last. On Mount
exactly.
Doom,
It
doom
really does
shall
seem like a
fall."
goodbye. Yeah.
Well, they both think
When
it
Gollum is
is.
sent away, sorry, I just to linger just for half a second. When Gollum is sent away, I have, maybe it is just naivety, but I do believe that there is still that goodness in him where he was running and fleeing, and it's just like he turns back to pursue him. As Sam chases Frodo after the farewell, it describes Gollum coming back. But and of course, because the temptation is just too strong, but there you still get that sense that it's like Gollum is in there,
Oh,
like or
for
Smeagol
sure.
is.
Part of Gollum, Smeagol wanted to leave. And then,
Yeah.
it's Slinker and Stinker, but that temptation of the ring and for having it for so long, it guides his every step, whether willingly or no at this point. And you're right. I think there's a whole part of Gollum that is not willing to turn back around and have one final stand, but he just can't control that dark side of him anymore.
Yeah.
So sad.
So
Poor
then they're in.
Gollum.
And
And
then
they're
so
in.
yeah, so Sam chases Frodo in, and the light of Galadriel doesn't even work inside the cracks of doom.
That was
It's
interesting for
utterly,
me to see, like, wow, the poisonous dark of this place, that even that light can't shine at all when it served them so well in so many other dark areas.
yeah, the heart of Sauron's realm. I think it's referred to as like many times.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about the description of Mount Doom is like not in a bad way, but it's underwhelming. It's just a pathway to a precipice. Much it's similar to the movies, but it's not like some great forge. There's no like runes and black speech, like because it's built up to be like Sauron's. It's his forge. It's where he made the One Ring, and it's just a fissure made by lava. I thought
Okay,
that was
that's a fair
interesting.
point, but I also, to the same point of Sauron not having this physical form that comes down and fights Aragorn, I thought the way that it's just dark, it's just blackness,
Mhm.
was equally as scary as if it had been super descriptive
Yeah.
of this entirely intricate forge.
Mhm.
Because it's just black. It's black, and it's like a chasm into the belly of the earth and all of this molten lava. And he doesn't dwell on it too much, but there's something really haunting about the lack of description, because I just felt like I was
Hmm.
ensconced in darkness, which to me is very terrifying.
Yeah, no, you're right. So I think it was purposeful. Um, because you would think that's like a prideful being like Sauron would go for the flair of, pinnacles and sharp edges and just, putting his little paw on everything. But no,
Well, I
no,
think
you're right.
also there's
Mm.
the idea that no one goes in there except Sauron. Like this isn't a
Yeah.
show like Barad-dûr or anything else that you can see. This is just for him. And so he hasn't put
And it's like a
all of
secret.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And it very much feels that way too. Like he has expected no one will ever enter there except him. So there's nothing to see. There's nothing to
Mhm.
be terrified of. It's just emulates the blackness that is Sauron's spirit. Because it's
Yeah.
only for him. And
No, very
I wonder
true.
if it's the power of being in that dark place, because up until this moment, even if Frodo has had his moments, when Sam has the ring, etc., he's so ready to get rid of it. He casts Gollum aside, he
Mhm.
runs to that, he says farewell to Sam, and then he stands on the precipice and has his Isildur moment, and he can't throw it in. He
Yeah,
says, I will
no.
not do this. The ring is mine. And he puts it on. And the movies did this almost perfect. There is one difference that I don't despair, but a stark difference in this, final action of the ring, but they do such a good job. And I mean, watching Sam's face break when they finally got there, and Frodo's whole demeanor changes. He's like, the ring is mine. He just slips it on his finger. Oh, poor Sam. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that, but poor
No,
Sam.
it is a wonderful scene because it actually happens very quickly in the books, both what
Mm-hmm.
the him taking it and then the resolution.
Yeah.
So I prefer, no, it's hard to say I prefer the movie's take on it because it is exactly the same, but it's a little more drawn out and a little more heartbreaking in a lot of ways. Just because I think that it just lingers just for a little longer.
Well, and you actually get
Um,
Sam's reaction, whereas things happen so quickly that you don't even get Sam's reaction. The ring is put on,
yeah,
and then
Sam
it
is
says, and
essentially
then many
knocked
things
down.
happened all at once. And so
Yeah.
Sam doesn't even have a moment to react.
I
Um,
do wonder because you mentioned how when Frodo's running in, I wonder if like he knew that he was never going to be able to throw it in. Because there is a moment, I forget specifically where, but it's in Mordor, and he says that he's not going to be able to do the task. I think it is when Sam tries to not tries to take it, but when he takes the ring back from Sam.
yeah,
I think he says essentially like I'm not going to be able to do this to be partnered with this thing.
no, that's fair.
And he's like,
I
and if you
wonder
take
if,
it by force, it will break my mind. So I just was
yes,
wondering if
that's
like maybe
true.
his point was I'm just gonna run and just jump. Like
Just
yeah,
leap
it's
into
like
the
I'm not gonna be able to
fires,
destroy it. Like I'm going to have to just make a run
leap
for it.
in, and then just stops. Well, no, I think that's a fair point. But also, it seemed this whole journey in Mordor, at least, that Frodo never even thought he would get there. So I think he was
No,
literally just
no,
taking
not
it one
once.
step at a time, and didn't
Yeah.
didn't fully understand the moment he was going to face the conflict he'd face internally when he was standing at the edge about to let it go. Like he never thought he was going to get there. He kept
No,
alluding to
I think
orcs
that's
just
exactly
capturing
right.
them.
No, and I think that point should be pressed because yeah, like exactly as you said, he did not expect ever, I think, to get to this point.
Yeah.
Um, which again just shows how admirable he is because he doesn't, I mean, even though he despaired in some sense, he still went forward, which is crazy. I mean, some little trouble happens in our day to day, you know, they're out of orange juice down at the grocery store and it's like, it's over, what's
Day
the point?
ruined.
Yeah. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna,
No, none of us truly understand this struggle in any capacity.
no, but to
Um,
struggle and then to continue on. So props to Frodo. But so yeah, so then Gollum makes his re-entrance. He knocks Sam on the head. Luckily, he doesn't go for any killing. He's just so obsessed with the ring, I assume, that he doesn't even think about
yeah, I don't think it's
Sam
like
as
that's
anything
a
more than an
good element.
obstacle.
I totally agree with you. He's just like his eyes are set on the ring. He's going to get Sam out of the way. And I love that visual in the movie too when Gollum has jumped onto an invisible being. You just see him chomp down, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
Frodo appears and
Uh,
he's got the ring in his hand. Although in the books, the description of the finger still in the ring, I don't
yeah,
even
it's
like.
gross.
Oh, I kind of wish they'd
Yeah.
shown that, but maybe it's for the best. But
Yeah.
before
But no, there
Gollum,
is a scene where Gollum takes it out.
that's right. No, you're right. You're right. You're right. But it's just not, for whatever reason, reading it, I was like, oh, this is so gross.
Yeah,
But
it
it just
is
happened
gross.
so
But you don't
fast in
get
the
that spurting
movies.
blood. Like, oh God.
I think we could,
And
I
and
think that's
another
okay.
difference in the films, which I do prefer, is like it's actually a wonderful moment, and I do wish it was in the books. Now that I think about it, when Frodo and Gollum fall together,
I
And
know.
Sam, and then there's that disgusting moment where he's rubbing his nub on Sam.
Reach.
Yeah, but it's conveyed so well about how Frodo wants to let go.
He's so, don't
Like,
you dare let go. And
yeah, he
oh my
looks
God.
down and he's like, sorry.
Yeah. No, you're right. He looks,
Um,
so that's exactly, so in the movies, Gollum is dancing, which is exactly what happens in the books, just to clarify it. Gollum is dancing at the edge and he's like, precious, precious, it's mine. And then he just dances too far and he falls off on his own. But in the movies, I love that Frodo is still wanting to fight for it. He's totally taken over by the ring and he grabs Gollum and the two of them are back and forth and they both topple over and you're just like, and you're right, the moment of Frodo looking down and he's like, I'm just gonna let go. And Sam sees that too because he says, don't you dare let go. Reach. And then he grabs his hand. And yes, the
like,
nub
listen,
is, Sam
stubby.
is so fearless at this point that he's willing to
I'm
take
like,
any of
oh.
that. Well, thank God it's not you, Sam.
Yeah, agreed.
Um, yeah.
No, so I love that part of the movies, and I've seen it. I don't think I would have made the connection of my own mind, but I know you've seen it as well. But that it's not a meme, but the photo on the internet making the comparison about how the first movie ends with Frodo reaching down in the water and grasping
Yeah.
Sam's arm, and then it ends with Sam reaching in the fire to grab Frodo.
Yeah, they've come full
Um,
circle. They need each other. It's just, oh my
they
God, the most
do.
beautiful relationship that's ever been written.
No, it
But
is.
one
It is.
one thing we did miss just in the moment where everything is happening at once, right before Gollum goes to grab the ring from Frodo. Frodo has put the ring on his finger while he's standing at the precipice of the crack of doom, and the Dark Lord becomes aware of him. And I love
That's
this
right.
moment and how it's written is so
Mhm.
interesting. The eye piercing all shadows looked across the plain to the door that he had made, and the magnitude of his own folly was revealed to him in a blinding flash, and all the devices of his enemy were at last laid bare. Thus his wrath blazed in consuming flame, but his fear rose like a vast black smoke to choke him, for he knew his deadly peril and the thread upon which his doom now hung. And it's evil shall oft
Yeah.
mar evil. He was so focused on Aragorn that all of a sudden everything clicks into place and he realizes what they were doing this whole time and how he didn't see it in his own backyard. It's really
Yeah.
powerful.
It's ultimately satisfying. And yeah, it's the conclusion of that running theme, perhaps not the highest one because there's many that run in tandem, but it's absolutely one of the major plot if not, not messages, but and it's great to hear because it's one of the few insights that you get of Sauron. Like Gandalf hints that this is his folly, but or like this will be his undoing, which it is.
Mhm.
But I thought I love that moment as well because you can just imagine like the dropping feeling that like we've all had, when I don't know.
You mess something
Um,
up so bad. And it's
yeah,
the
so
first
I love it.
perspective from Sauron. Like you don't get a
Yeah,
ton of a glimpse, but it's literally the only perspective
yeah,
from
exactly.
Sauron. And it's just, yeah, it's really powerful. It's cool.
No, and it's very satisfying. I think it's like it goes back to our previous conversation, but I think that is more satisfying than if there was like a confrontation with Aragorn or even with Frodo. If Sauron is like waiting for them in Mount Doom or so, I think this is much more masterfully done.
Satisfying. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. So yeah, I mean, that's everything has happened at once. Although we missed that beautiful moment of Sam literally grabbing Frodo out of the fires of hell, essentially. Um,
Mhm.
Gollum is gone, and that's it. Sam and Frodo run out of the doorway, but they're still very much on this volcano, like live volcano. And at the moment, and it's in the books too. I'm glad you're here with me here at the end of all things, Sam. And I texted you, and it's like the Shire music is just going in my head right now. It's so sad, and
It is beautiful because again, like they both are aware that they're not gonna make it. I mean, even Sam once more, ever hope is it comes back to him because he's like, let's just go down the path at least. Because they both
yes,
they're just like, we're going to die. This is the end.
yeah,
I think Frodo, I don't know, I forget exactly what he says, but he's just like, this is the end. Um, but that it's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful way for them to end off in each other's arms, two little hobbit figures on in the middle of a desert, a desolation.
that's exactly it. And you can see, or Sam can see in Frodo that there's peace on his, even though they know this is the
Mhm.
end and they're going to die, his burden has been lifted and his eyes don't have any strain or madness or fear. There's just peace and it's done and we've done it. And you're right. They both think they're going to die. They know this is the end, but Sam does say, look, let's at least look at that little area up there. It's not full of
Yeah,
lava yet.
just
Let's
lay
just
down.
go post up there for a moment. And thank God they do, because the Eagles then saved them. The Eagles that Pippin was
Mhm.
unsure if he was hearing someone yell, the Eagles are coming or not, as he's being crushed on the in front of
Yeah,
the Black Gate. But they do come,
exactly.
Dwyer and his army, his crew.
Yeah, the boys. So now the chapters do go back to the Black Gate, right moments before the ring is destroyed. You
Yeah.
go to Aragorn and Gandalf.
Yes, and I love
Um,
that they go back and you literally get to see everyone's perspective in these moments that the entire books have been building up to. So thank God, there's just satisfaction all around.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. And it
yeah,
happens
and
very similar because I wasn't sorry, I wasn't quite sure if I knew that Barad-dûr fell, but when the earthquake happens and all like the orcs in the films, this is when they all fall through, I was like I don't remember, but it essentially does not to the degree of the world falling apart, but all of there is a moment when the ring is destroyed, when all of the towers in Mordor fall and the
yeah,
wall, and there's like a vision of the wall, or I think Gandalf might have the vision, someone does, of the
yeah,
walls and the fortresses all throughout the realm
yeah.
shattering and being like washed away in a tide.
No, you're right. It's not to the like the movies just take it a little bit further where the ground cracks around everyone except the men. Like somehow the men
Mhm.
don't fall into this chasm. It's just a little bit much, but it's like the sheer force and power and will of Sauron was keeping everything up. So the towers of the teeth fall down, the rampart crumbles, the
Mhm.
Black Gate was hurled in ruin.
Yeah.
And they can
And
hear the
then
roar of the mountain.
yeah, and believe because I think Gandalf sees it, and then when we get to Faramir, he also sees it because it's described the
Yes.
same where there's this blackness, this black against black with a crown of thunder or lightning, and then
Yeah.
it's just blown away in the wind. And I think that's like the spirit of Sauron now
Leaving
just yeah, yeah.
or
Which is quite cool. It's very cool. I'd totally forgotten that little description. It's very
yeah.
neat. I'm picturing this like huge black mass, like a black hole almost
Hmm.
with a tempest above it.
No, it's true.
Um,
And while that is like I love how it's written in the books, I think it would have been really hard to showcase in the movies. And I think that's why the eye image at the top
that's a
of
bit
Barad-dûr
difficult.
works so well. But I like how the
Mhm.
eye's straining, he's looking around, you can almost see fear in the eye, and then just psh, it
Yeah,
goes
like the
out.
pupil like looks like it. Yeah, it's small to like look at the door and then like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then the light just like psh, goes out. And it's just I really like how the movies did it. It's not how I picture it
yeah.
in my
I
mind,
agree.
but I
I
don't
don't. There
care.
was without having Sauron, except for there's a brief moment where he's holding the planter in the eye.
Right.
They did it as best as they could. I think if they really wanted to, they could have described his like spirit dying, but it wasn't necessary. But to go back to what we were speaking about with the orcs and how they're slaves, here it's shown that it actually our Sauron's armies. I think it's hinted at before, but his armies are held together really by the will, and like he has put himself in so many areas. Like he is his captains, and there's like it's almost like I can't think of what story I'm thinking of now. Maybe it is Harry Potter. There's some trope, anyways, where like there's the idea of like the orc and then Sauron's will in the body. And
Right.
Sauron, like, you almost feel like they're like or even like The Last of Us, like how like they're zombies. I don't
Right.
think that they are, but you do get that impression of this is what
His
held them
force
to their
is
purpose.
yes, like his force is leading him. I don't think it's Harry Potter, but that is something
No,
certainly that like his force is in each of these beings to some way. Like he's not possessing them, but he
no,
is
no.
forcing them forward by his sheer will. And once
He's
his will
giving them
breaks,
their purpose essentially, yeah.
yeah. And
Because they
without his
flee.
will, they are nothing. They do, and a lot of the men actually fall to the ground and beg for mercy, and some of them
But some
flee.
of them
But
fight, and I think that shows the difference between orcs and men because the orcs all flee.
that's right.
Many of the men
That's a good
flee,
point.
some sue for mercy, but then some who just hate the West,
Keep fighting.
yeah, keep fighting
Yeah.
and they
No,
lose.
that's really interesting. Of course they lose. You can't stand against Aragorn, my guys. What are you
No.
doing? But no, yeah, that's exactly it. And they do say something that they're spell enslaved. The creatures
Yeah,
of
the
Sauron,
beast.
or troll or beast, spell enslaved. So there is
Mhm.
some what we're saying is kind of alluded to as well, that they're like the force of Sauron is what's driving a lot of these beings along, not the men, but the
Yeah, but
creatures
like the
of
animals of the world and things
yeah.
that would have been made by the Valar or in the song.
Yeah. And then that's the moment when Gandalf goes up to Dwyer and says, I've been a burden for you before. I need you. I need two of your fastest men. Let's go. We got to
Yeah.
see if these hobbits
Thrice
are
pace for
around.
all.
So is this the moment? Do we talk about why didn't the Eagles just take the
Yeah.
ring to Middle Earth? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I mean, I have my own, but I
Yeah,
mean, I
well,
know it's been talked about a bunch, but yeah, I want to hear what you think.
I think it's hard to now separate my own original thoughts to it because I know that the prevailing idea is just the Eagles say like they're not taxis, and they say that like they're not, this is an issue for men. But then I think there's logistical arguments you could make as well, where it's like they're the fell beasts. There's always the watchful presence of Mordor. It never sleeps. If an eagle was just flying in, I think an eagle would break. And then also you have the idea of the ring itself. And it's like, who's to say that an eagle is beyond temptation of the ring?
That's a
Um,
really good point. I haven't
you
really thought
know,
about that one before, but that's true. It could just tempt them. And then we've got these evil eagles. But that was my immediate thought too. Obviously, a massive eagle flying into Mordor is going to be noticed right away. Like, how would they get? That's my first thought when people are like, why couldn't the Eagles just take it? Are you kidding me? The secrecy that was needed for this, the fact that
mhm.
two little hobbits were even discovered time and time again and had to find their way out of it. Like, that elusiveness is not going to be captured by a giant eagle. Anyway, it's funny,
Yeah.
but it feels like it goes without saying, but I know that's been a big topic of, not true
No,
fans being like,
yeah,
why couldn't the
exactly.
Eagles just take it?
No, and there's a lot of, even though they go over it so well in the Council of Elrond, I don't know why the internet still has the debates of just like, why not just like put it in metal or like throw it in the sea? It's like the idea is that Sauron, while he remains, if the ring was not destroyed, but it also wasn't found, Sauron still wins. Like, it was very fortunate, almost again, like Providence, that the ring was found at the time that Sauron has his heightened power.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so
No,
yeah, I
it's
think
so
that the
true.
Eagles thing, I think it's just becoming like an internet funny meme thing, but I think that there's very good reason. I don't think it's an oversight on
No, no,
Tolkien's part. I
no.
don't think it's like a loophole in storytelling.
I think we've made some valid points on why it doesn't work. If there's any other points, we're definitely open to hearing them.
No,
But anyway, regardless, the Eagles do in this moment go with Gandalf to find Sam and Frodo, and that's when you have the very last exchange between Sam and Frodo. I think this is actually where Sam is like, "Let's just go to this ledge. Like, let's put our death at bay as long as we can." And that's when Frodo says, "Hope fails, an end comes. We're lost in ruin and downfall, and there's no escape." And I love when Sam talks about the tale. He's like, I wonder what tale they're going to tell of this. Now comes the story of Nine-Fingered Frodo and the Ring of Doom. And oh my God, that would have been, I wonder
yeah,
if that was a working title for Lord of the Rings.
yeah, interesting. Maybe it's a little Easter egg because yeah, maybe it could have
Yeah.
been. And Frodo is very much like Sauron now. I mean, not in any way other than he has 9 fingers. Um,
True.
like he's
Oh,
9 fingers.
weird. I
There's
never
no
made that
there's no blade
connection.
though. Yeah,
No.
and there's the symbolism. I actually I should have looked. I meant to look this up more before we started this, so now I wish I did. But there's the symbolism of the right hand, just in mythology and in religion and whatnot, like the left and the right. The right
Mhm.
being like control, and you shouldn't let you don't let what each other hand is doing. But I don't think it's without purpose that it's on Frodo's right hand, and is like your hand of control essentially.
That he's lost his
Um,
finger.
like yeah, that where the ring is one put on, and then also where
Yeah.
you've lost it.
No, that's interesting. There's so many different like nods to these moments and so many interpretations of very small actions that happen in these books. Like honestly, you could talk about it forever. That's never
Oh
even
yeah,
occurred to
it's
me
it's
either. But
it's it's more dense than anything. And I think that goes to show the skill of Tolkien because I'm sure for every one that was intentional, there's one that wasn't, but it was just because of his wealth of understanding of stories, and then just like a human's ability, like we just have a natural ability to put things in
yeah,
without us realizing.
and find those common
Um,
connections. Yeah.
but yeah, so okay, so Gandalf goes and he saves Frodo and Sam. Was the third eagle there for Gollum?
Whoa, I just assumed one was bearing Gandalf, one picks up Frodo, and one picks up Sam. But you know what? That is so interesting. I wonder if it was because Gandalf knew he played a role at the end. Wow.
Yeah.
I like to think that it was now that you said that.
Yeah, that's not even my own original idea. I've seen that like just mainly from the films when it's like you see the three come in because there's also
Yeah.
three in the movies.
Yeah.
One things the film do better is Gandalf rides the eagles, and I think that's a little cooler than just like being in their talon.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree. I like had to read that again, and I was
he's
like, is
just
Gandalf really not riding this guy? Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, no, some visuals the movie really got right. I'm glad we didn't have to
yeah.
watch Ian McKellen just lying in a claw.
Yeah, just, yeah, this is horizontal.
They're
Um,
there. No, but
Yeah, yeah.
no, it's a beautiful visual, of course. And then the moment when Sam and Frodo come back to life essentially is a little different. I mean, I love the laughter. So it's weird though, because it's in the books, it's
The
Sam.
same but
So
different.
Sam is the one who wakes up and he sees Gandalf, and this is he thought Gandalf was dead this whole time. And he's like, oh my God, I thought you were dead. Is everything sad going to come untrue? And they just all start laughing. And I love that
Yeah,
moment in the
laughing and
movies
then
when it's Frodo
crying.
and well, I mean, you'd be so overwhelmed with emotion.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, no.
But I
But
love
go
that
ahead.
moment in the movies, even though it's a little bit like maybe it's a little bit cheesy. I don't care
No, no, it's
when Frodo
perfect.
wakes up and he sees Gandalf and they just start laughing, and then the fellowship all
Yeah.
comes in, and then at the very end, Sam's standing there, Shire music swells once again, like, and the look between them, like we just went through some shit. Like no one is gonna
Mhm.
understand this. Oh my
Yeah,
God. I'm
exactly.
watching these movies immediately when we're finished this whole
Yeah.
book because
No, I know, agreed. I might do the same. They're masterfully done.
great.
And that's I love that scene as well. And I don't think it's cheesy. Um and like it's similar here, like you said, it's Sam. But they do have the laugh, like it's just merriment. And I think it just expresses very well both in the films and the books, just like what words could you say? It is just, if it's
It's
just
beyond.
the laughter, just like relief. But to the credit of the movies, even though we're about to see like Aragorn and all of his glory, and the hobbits are given a position of high honor, I do like the intimacy of the in the films of when everyone comes to see them, and even Aragorn, and it's
Yeah.
just the fellowship.
Yeah. I know
Like
that
it's just the
reunion of
last
them
time you
all.
see them all together, and
The
they're all
only thing
just
that would have made it
laughing.
perfect is if Boromir's ghost, his specter, had just been standing there
Yeah,
with them. Like missed
like in
opportunity to bring
Star
my man
Wars.
back. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Anyway, maybe that would have officially bordered the line of cheesy, but love Boromir and I missed him in this moment.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Having Aragorn, even though he's the king at this point, come and be part of the fellowship once again, would have been really beautiful in the books too.
No, would have, but I do love the waking up. And yeah, so then I guess I guess from there they just go on to the feast.
Well,
Is that
no,
right?
before the feast, there's the coronation, isn't there? Of
No, the coronation happens after in Gondor.
oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, you're right. So then they go on to the feast. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And they have that. And it's funny because when Frodo and Sam are sitting there, they're like these two kids, like who are these kids serving everyone? And it's Merry and Pippin, and they're like, we're squires now, no big deal, but
Yeah,
respect the
exactly. But they're
role.
taller.
Yes,
Yeah.
because they've been drinking the Ent draft. So that's an extended scene in Two Towers when Pippin is drinking it and Mary's like, how did you just get taller than me? And they're both like chugging it back as much as they can. But it's funny to see that that came from the books, actually.
Yeah, exactly. But in the movies, it almost seems like they lose their height or Pippin or Merry had caught up because like at the end of the Two Towers, he's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
measuring the distance.
Yeah. And it's like everything is right with the world
But
again.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. I was just gonna go to the field there because
Yeah.
I do love the moment how it again, like, because the movies do the ending very well. You bow to no one. You get a similar thing here.
You
But
don't get a
it's not
similar
as
thing.
impactful.
No, it's not
Yeah,
at
I mean,
all.
not everyone. Like Aragorn kneels to the hobbits, and then he puts them on the throne.
Yeah.
But then they're essentially just serenaded by a minstrel. But everyone,
Yes.
everyone honors. I think everyone has their swords out and they shake their spears, and there is like a cheer of like the halflings, the prince of the halflings, and like give them great
Long live the
praise.
halflings. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
so
right.
it is similar. I think it's more emotional in the movies, but
You're
it's
right.
similar.
It's similar
You
because
get where
he
the
Aragorn
idea
has a
came from.
throne and he has two seats next to him for Sam and Frodo. And yes, then the minstrel
No, no, I
sings to
think I think he
them.
puts them on his throne.
You might be
That was
right,
my
actually.
interpretation.
Yeah. No, you might actually
And
be right that he
they're
puts them
sitting
on the
together
on
on
the
it.
throne. Yeah.
And then
No, that's true.
Aragorn sits sat beside them. But
Yeah.
it doesn't really make a difference. But then
It
you get the minstrel singing.
yes, and
Sorry, go
that's
ahead.
beautiful, but it's not the same to me. I will the moment when Aragorn is walking through everyone and everyone's bowing to him, and then the four hobbits bow, my friends, you bow to no one. I mean, I cry a lot during these movies, but that moment,
Tearjerker.
I honestly cry every time. Like it's so
Yeah,
beautiful. And
it is.
yeah,
And
the
like the
books did
look
a
of
good
their
job, but
faces of like
the wonder
Frodo
of
and
it.
Sam, especially, just like, yeah, it's like they feel just totally out of place. They're finally taller than everyone. I agree.
Yeah.
I like it better in the movies. I have to say.
Yeah.
Um, and it's one of the
But
most powerful moments throughout. But
for sure. But I get what you're saying, especially Aragorn actually putting them on his throne. I don't think I've read that accurately, because I think you're right. Um, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful symbol, and it is supposed to emulate the same sentiment,
yeah, the same
essentially.
feelings. Yeah,
But it just, the movie hits me with that one. That's a win
yeah,
for
it
the
does.
movies.
But as you get the description of when the minstrel's singing, it doesn't give any words to the song. I guess like the lay. I guess we just read the whole thing, so you don't need it. Um, but there is, I think there, I wish I wrote it down here because I don't have, I also don't have Goodreads. Um, but there's a quote there. I believe it happens after the minstrel sings about like how it was like essentially bittersweet or delightful in some way. The Tolkien does a wonderful job at describing it, but again, it's one of those themes that are it's so related to the entire narrative of how sorrow and like love are so almost codependent.
Entwined,
And
yeah.
Gladriel even has the quote about like how love and grief are mingled, and now perhaps they grow because of that. They grow the greater. And I
Mm-hmm.
think Tolkien's the whole idea of the third age is that like the elves are leaving, and everything's are passing. It's a grief-ridden time,
Yeah.
but
And even
the
with
simple love of a master and a servant and the fellowship
yeah.
overrode everything.
No, that's true. And even with victory and the joy of that victory, there's sorrow, because in being victorious, the elves' power has diminished and they leave. So
Hmm.
it
Yeah,
certainly
and
is that.
Gandalf has to go, and it's the dominion of men. But yeah, I just love it. I think it's a very mature. Obviously, Tolkien was very old writing this, but I think it's a very mature theme of just and I think again, I love how Tolkien uses weeping and like how characters cry throughout it. Like we've seen Aragorn weep, Sam and Frodo weep. Everyone
I
weeps
think even
essentially.
Gandalf has at some point, or at
Yeah,
least
yeah,
shown,
probably.
sincere despair. Because I think it shows the importance of these emotions. It's two sides of the coin. To have joy, you have sorrow, and you kind of, they do go hand in
Mhm.
hand with this. Like love and grief is kind of they're essential elements to a human experience or a lived experience, because
Yeah,
so
you
many of these
can't
people
have
aren't
one
human.
without the other. And yeah, exactly. So I think that there was just a line. I wish I wrote it down in my notes there because that was quite touching. But
Hmm.
it was just like, yeah,
No, you're
this is the
right. And
Lord of
I
the
don't have
Rings
that
if you had to
exact
sum it up
one,
in a
but
sentence.
no, you're right. Oh, I wish I had it too, because the moment I have is when the minstrel says, I'm going to sing to you the song of Frodo of the Nine Fingers in the Ring of Doom. And Sam laughs out loud and then weeps. And he's like, all my wishes have come true. And it just
Yeah,
kind of comes full
as they
circle.
should, Sam. You've deserved them. You
God,
deserved
no
every last
kidding.
wish.
Yeah, no, he's deserved it all. Anyway, that brings us to the chapter 5, which is the steward and the king. And so I think we can go through
Mhm.
this chapter and then let's stop there, because we've got a lot to go through with the last half of book 6.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah, we can do. How long have we been running?
oh, certainly over an hour. We're probably close to the hour and a half. I don't know, honestly. We get so caught up.
I
I
think we
don't
may
even
as well
check the
just finish at
time.
5. Yeah, I think we
But
should
yeah,
just
I think
finish
we
at 5
should.
anyways.
Yeah.
Because there's
And
not
it's
too much to say. I
no,
don't
I
think
mean
anyway.
the big takeaway from this one for me is just the Eowyn Faramir romance, which you
Mm.
don't see at all in the movies. The extended, you get like a little nod they give each other in the
They're
houses of
holding
healing.
hands.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
holding hands at the coronation. So it's really barely alluded to in the movies, but I love these characters make so much sense when you read them in the books. And I said
Hmm.
earlier that I have a crush on Book Faramir. I'm in love with Book Faramir. Like I
Yeah,
really am. He's
he's the G.
so beautiful, and he has so many quotes, and oh my god, the way he just talks to her, like and I know she's still a little hung up on Aragorn, but she gets over it quick. And I just love the way he sees her, and he talks about the pity that he sees in her is deeply stirred, but it's her loveliness, and she still has this grief. And she truly says to the healer, at least, like, I wanted to die in battle, and now I don't really know what to
Hmm.
do. Can I at least leave this house? And he just has some really great lines to her where he's like, you're beautiful and fairer than all the flowers. And I don't know, I guess that a lot of this
Yeah,
garbage
no,
would really work on me, but like he is just such a stud. And I really like
yeah,
seeing their relationship grow.
Tolkien tries his hand at fan fiction. Um,
No, yes,
no,
and he would kill it.
yeah, no, it is done very well. And it's honestly like not tonally, it's not surprising, but because I think it totally fits and it completes the arcs, more so of Eowyn than Faramir, I think.
Yeah.
But you're right, it gives depth to the character and how she describes how she expected and wanted to die in battle, how she overcomes how um maybe these senses of false feelings that she projected onto Aragorn. But one thing that I found really cool about Faramir is how forthrightly he speaks. And it's
Mhm.
just like he's like, yeah, even asking, he's like, do you want me to speak plain? And then there's another moment she's like, stop, don't speak in riddles. And he's just very honest the entire time. And he's like, I know, like, there's two reasons why you didn't go. And I was like, if there's
Yes.
a woman here, I would not have said either of these. But it's like, you still love Aragorn and you have feelings for me. And then he's like, okay, do you love Aragorn or will you just not let yourself love me? Like, are you so caught up in your grief that you're just not going to let yourself? Anyways, I love the honesty between the characters. Like, Faramir's wisdom and his self-worth, I suppose, is there.
Yes. His
And
self-awareness,
Eowyn,
like we talked about this a lot in the books
yeah,
too. He's so aware of the differences between him and Boromir. And in the books, he's less, I don't know what the right term is. Like, it's not like he's jealous of Boromir, but he's more understanding of this is how Boromir is. This is who I am. I know who I am. And he totally does
he's
that
more
to Eowyn.
kingly.
And yes, he totally is. He's just has such strong sense of self. And Eowyn, who's very lost in this moment, is he helps bring her out of that abyss. Like he helps her understand that because he is so self-aware and so self-assured that he's kind of able to help Eowyn get to this moment in herself too and understand that there is purpose in life and she didn't die on the battlefield, but there's ways to go on.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and there's a couple interesting quotes, but one of the ones that I had noted is I believe that in the movies, when Eowyn has a dream, and we've talked about this before. Aragorn, she grabs Aragorn's hand and she talks about this dream, and he covers her with a blanket. It's about a dark wave climbing over and taking everything. And Faramir actually is the one who says that this happens. Like it reminds me of Numenor, of the land of Westerness that foundered, and of the great dark wave climbing over the Greenlands and above the hills and coming on darkness unescapable. I often dream of it. Did you not tell me
Mhm.
that this is an actual dream that Tolkien had, or am I totally
That's
misunderstanding
right.
that?
And the first time you see this dream is actually when Frodo is in the house of Tom Bombadil. Um, and Frodo has that
Really?
dream.
Oh
Yeah,
yes, because
yeah,
they all have they all have scary dreams that turn into something
and
positive,
they
and that's Frodo's, right?
Yeah, and Frodo, and he wakes up thinking that it had flooded. But yes, it's a dream that I think Tolkien had. Someone can correct me. I know for sure Tolkien had the dream. I think it was before the onset of the First World War. But it was essentially that. It was like, and that's where he got the idea for Numenor. Like it was from that dream because it was like he just. I don't know if he compared it with Atlantis, but it was just
Wow.
there's like this wave that he cannot escape, and it consumes him. So it's just super cool how he put that in. I mean, I've had some horrifying dreams. Maybe I should write them in a little dream journal and get to work.
You have
But
heard my
yeah, no,
dreams.
that's
It's
cool.
terrifying. It's
Yeah,
terrifying.
yours are
But for
strange.
someone, so for someone to be able to have such a, I don't know, my dreams aren't this impactful or cool or like could be representative of a larger, I just have very weird personal dreams that I'm not going to get
Yeah,
into.
no, but I
It's
wonder.
cool
Cause
though.
now I don't remember. Maybe I'll look into it now. But I don't know if it was a recurring dream he would have. I know for sure it's a Tolkien dream, but I'll
Yeah.
look into that after because it clearly did leave like a very deep impression where not only do two characters, I mean, Boromir, I think also might have had this dream. I don't recall,
I think you're
but to
onto something
build
with that.
the a mythos around the like the whole idea of Numenor and where the Sea Kings come from and their hubris and wanting to go to the Valar, all of this just coming from a dream you had.
It's
It's
so cool.
quite
And
cool.
again, this only alluded to in The Lord of the Rings because Tolkien hasn't even expanded on this whole part of the history at this point. So it is cool how embedded it is
Yeah.
in this story and it adds to it. But even without knowing any of the elements, you still get hints of what this history is and that there's way more to Middle Earth than just this one age. It's just so
Because
intricate. He does a great job.
it's crazy, and like you jump ahead to when Gandalf and Aragorn are in the mountains behind Gondor when Aragorn is looking for the sapling to renew the tree. It's like
Mm-hmm.
they give mention about like the lineage of this tree, how like this tree came from like Nimloth. I forget the names, but essentially it goes back to the two trees in Valinor. What are the names?
Mm-hmm.
Telperion, or something like this in
I don't
Lorland.
remember.
I don't know, but the two trees essentially that were in the West in the very beginning of creation,
Mm-hmm.
uh, shortly after. And it's just like, but like you said, like as a reader, not only would you not know that, but you'd have no way of ever knowing that.
Yeah,
Like Tolkien knows, of course, he has the Silmarillion essentially in his documents, but
right.
it's crazy how there's so much depth. We've said it before, but it feels like sometimes I feel like I know the history better than
My
my own.
own. No, it's
Yeah.
true. There's just so many layers to it. And that moment where he plants the sapling, it's a little different because in the movies, the dead tree just starts to bloom again, which is a really
Mm.
cool visual. But this makes a little more
Yeah, it
sense
works
that
just
they
as well.
uproot that tree, they plant the sapling, And this is where they have that coronation moment. So Faramir actually comes up and says, you know, as the steward, I'm passing this on to the king of the city, which is Aragorn. And do we all agree he will dwell here? And everyone's like roaring in approval.
Yeah.
And then it's very interesting how they talk about in Aragorn's time, the city's made more fair than it ever has been. And it's again like that combination of the different races that did make up the company, the fellowship. Because the gates are wrought of mithril and steel, and the streets are paved with white marble. The folk of the mountain labor in it, and the folk of the wood rejoice to come here, and all was healed and made good. And it's just
That's right.
the happy ending
Yeah,
that you
it's
really
like
want.
no, it is. It really is. And like I mean we spoke, I think it was in the other one, but maybe it's just our cynical age, but it's just perfect. And it's not, I don't think it's uncalled for. I don't think it's unjustified. I think that narratively it fits. It should be like a happy ending, and it is. It's really satisfying. I mean, we get to we'll get to the bittersweet stuff in the second
Yeah.
half of this book, actually, but the way that
But
this
for
wraps
now,
up is perfect.
yeah.
Like Aragorn marries Arwen. Like you know, the relationship as we've said is not fleshed out really in the books.
I have to say, in the
But
books, that feels very random to me. Like everyone's like, guys, wait, I have this big moment coming. It's a big day. And like, boom, he's
Mhm.
marrying Arwen. There's just so little. I like that the movies actually spent some time building a relationship for them. It didn't need to be
Yeah, agreed.
overly cheesy, and I don't think it was, but like, I just don't get the
No,
sense
no,
that,
it happens very quickly. Like you,
yeah,
especially if you weren't familiar with the story, I feel like at that point you would have totally forgotten Arwen. You
totally.
might, if you're, and like if you were way back in the 50s reading this for the first time, it's been you're reading Return of the King 2 years after Fellowship came out. You're not remembering,
When she didn't even have a quote in
maybe.
Fellowship, she's just like
No,
referenced
she speaks.
as,
No, she's in the halls of song and she talks to
I
Frodo, I think.
guess.
And she'll get at some moment here because her and
Yeah,
Frodo,
she
I think, have
does.
developed a little relationship. But yeah, no,
It's just a
so
little rushed in the
it
books.
is. Yeah, it is rushed. It is. But to go back for a moment. The coronation is quite beautiful. I love the bromance between Eomer
Éomer
and
and
Aragorn.
Aragorn, yeah. They're the
Yeah.
best. The two of them, like, oh my God, that's who we should have married.
Yeah, yeah, honestly. And yeah, and Aragorn sits in his judgment, and I thought that was really cool because
Mm,
it shows what kind of king he'll be. He's very merciful. He lets everyone go. He gives the slaves of Mordor the lands of Mordor, or at least
yeah,
the eastern parts.
that's
He lets
right.
everyone free to go. There's no punishment given, which
Yeah.
is
And even
pretty impressive
Baragon
because these are men
too.
who chose.
Well, absolutely. No, you're right. It shows that he is a merciful king. And he has that really beautiful moment with Baragon, who is the man of Gondor who stopped Denethor's pyre from consuming Faramir and ended up actually killing some, you know, innocent people to prevent that from happening. And it's kind of a funny moment because Aragorn says, you know, I'm sending you away from Gondor, and he looks crushed, but Aragorn says, in fact, to go to Ithilien where you will serve with Prince Faramir, whom you loved
Mhm.
so much that you saved his life. So yeah, he's very merciful, and he has just a beautiful moment of showing what his kingship is going to be like throughout this
Yeah,
fourth age.
exactly. And he's well deserved. It's interesting how like he now has this air about him that's a lot more I don't know, ethereal.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's yeah, it's really beautiful to see it all come together. And like you said, a couple bittersweet moments are to come in the last 4 chapters of the books. But this part just really ends on a high note, and you see the success
Yeah,
and the
I,
the
ju
victory.
I just wish you got more of the fellowship. Because there's the moment in the not the coronation, but in the after the feast, they sit down and Merry and Pippin tells Sam and Frodo their adventures. And then I was
Journey.
just thinking, it's like Frodo and Sam just went through hell. Here they are, but like talking trees and epic battles, and going to all these cool places. It's like, all right, like I starved to death in the desert. Like you
Yeah,
guys got the better
sounds
end of
cool
the
though,
stick on
guys.
this one.
I think Sam does say at some
Yeah,
point, he's like, well, you can't be everywhere, but it seems like I certainly missed a lot. And yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I would
exactly.
not
He's like
ever
peering for
envy.
Oliphants. Yeah, and
Yeah.
all right, Sam, relax. And you
Yeah.
find out that Gimli was the one who saved Pippin. He's like, because
Yeah.
Gimli's like, I loved you. And he's like, I love you, if not just because of all the trouble
At the
that you've
Battle of
caused
the
me.
Black Gate, he saved him
Yeah.
from being crushed by that troll. No, you're right.
Mhm.
You don't get a ton of that. I mean, there's still 4 chapters to go, so we'll get a little bit of it
Yeah,
there.
exactly. But that
Um,
many partings, I believe, is the next chapter.
yeah.
Um,
So I
but yeah,
think we should end it
overall, I
here.
think
And
that
oh,
yeah.
sorry, finish your
No, I was just
thought.
gonna say, I think that it's just a very satisfying conclusion to the plot. I
Yeah.
think that There's a lot that goes into the character. Everyone has their moment, and it's great. You see this. I think Aragorn comes into his own very well. Is Grim barking?
Yes, it's like he
Yeah,
knows.
that's
He
good.
knew we were wrapping it up. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go take the dog out, but I'm glad we got through it. That was perfect timing.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I mean, we can talk through, I think because many partings blend so seamlessly from this chapter, we might revisit this a little bit. But yeah, when we next get together and chat through Lord of the Rings, we will finish off the series for good, which is very sad. I'm sure we'll be
Mhm.
back to this, and there's many
Exactly.
more elements, including the appendices, the letters of Tolkien, but excited to see this through to the end, mostly so I can rewatch the movies for the 100th time when we're done.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I'm
Right.
looking forward to putting to wrapping this up.
Yeah, me too. All right, we'll see you again soon, Sam. We'll have another good take soon. And thanks for anyone tuning in. Can't wait to finish this off with y'all.
Yeah, see you, Katie.